Well, James, crystal clear water. There seems to be a lot of different opinions out there from various anglers. What are your thoughts, mate?
Well, I think carp can spot a rig, especially in this gin clear water. I think in coloured water, you can get away with anything. And some of the most respected anglers, in my opinion, don't believe that the carp can pick out your rig. I've experienced in the last 2 years fishing a real clear water in Cambridgeshire. I've been able to view my rig from a boat. You can see everything, mate. A coated braid stands out like a sore thumb, even if I'm matching it to the colour of the lake bed. So, for instance, a gravel colour on gravel, you know, you can still see it fairly well.
You get every different colour of gravel, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And I'd rather my rig, you know, you couldn't see it at all. And fluorocarbon for me is as close as it comes to, you know, to invisibility underwater. I mean, even with fluorocarbon, they reject that sometimes. It might be the glint of the hook or the lead, for instance, you know, and they still reject it. But I've settled on some rigs that we're going to show you shortly that, in my opinion, are the ultimate in inconspicuous rigs, really.
You've been having a few as well, haven't you?
I have, yeah, been doing really well lately. Had a couple of 30-pounders, been really close to my target fish. The ones that I've had are really, really special as well, Joey. They could be older than me, you know, older than 30 years old, so...
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, we've seen it on the underwater videos, and them fish are cautious. I personally think they're a lot more cautious when they're in the edge, you know, when they're in shallow water, when it is crystal clear. And, you know, sometimes you actually see their eyes sort of looking down, can't you, definitely. Looking for stuff. And they definitely seem to, like, mark a spot, don't they? If your rig's there, they seem to, like... They know it's there, they'll sort of feed all around it and ignore it, won't they?
They're cautious, and yeah, I've got a good example of what you just said there, actually. Last year, I went out as normal, rode out, dropped the bait onto the spot. It was a gravel spot about the size of an unhooking mat. I say a gravel spot, it was actually real clean silt with a few flecks of gravel in it. They seem to be the best spots. Anyway, I've dropped the rig as normal with a 5-ounce lead, normal short fluorocarbon hook link, and over the top of that, I've scattered some peanuts, some hemp, and a few tiger nuts. I've got double tiger nut on the hook. Anyway, I've rode back and left it there all night. Haven't had any bleeps or anything, so I thought, you know, no fish have visited the area. Anyway, I've rode back out to check the spot through the aquascope, which can obviously allows you to see everything under the water. And all the bait's gone, other than the golden tiger nuts and my double tiger nut hook bait. It's just left there. So, whether it was the tiger nuts that was the problem or whether they've spotted the rig, it was one of those. And
definitely finicky feeders.
They're cunning creatures, really are. So I think we should do everything in our power in clear waters to make the rig as inconspicuous as possible, and fluorocarbon's the way forward, in my opinion.
So you use fluorocarbon on your main lines as well in there?
In there I am, yeah. And on other waters, if I need to cast a little bit further, obviously fluorocarbon's a little bit more brittle, and you know, it doesn't cast quite as fast. So if I'm going a bit further and the water's clear, I'll use, you know, a real long fluorocarbon leader, a contour leader with 12-pound subline as the main line.
I mean, I've used fluorocarbon on as main line for the last 4 or 5 years now. Absolutely love it, and I'm sure brilliant. It makes a big difference, not just out there but back here as well, you know.
Yeah, for sure. It sinks well as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sinks into the debris, doesn't it? You know, if you allow it to, give it enough slack, it'll actually
definitely
find its way in there. So yeah, fluorocarbon main line, that's definitely a big edge, isn't it, in clear water?
Yeah, for sure.
Right, James, I mentioned the rigs you've been using with great success on your syndicate water, so talk us through them.
Well, you say rigs, it's more like a rig because the one I've been using a lot is my version of the hinge stiff, really. Just a much simpler version, really, with no loops or anything. There's a long boom section of fluorocarbon, which is obviously particularly invisible underwater. Not invisible, but you can't really see it, mate, to be honest.
It's pretty invisible, yeah.
It's pretty invisible, yeah. It's as near as it gets. Then a small section of mouth trap, as you can see here. There's a nice curve in there. In fact, I'd probably curve it a little bit more than that. That just acts as a little claw, really. It's always sitting there ready to catch in that bottom lip.
Lovely little curve there, isn't there? That just sort of curves around their lip, doesn't it? And
it's always really there to catch hold in the bottom lip.
Yeah. All right, this boom section, what's that? So it's 15 pound.
15 pound IQ2.
Sort of got enough stiffness in it to stop it tangling. Obviously, you're dropping it from a boat, but if you were to cast it, you know, that would stop it tangling. But then it's also supple enough to
sit over stuff. Yeah, I mean,
find its place.
I found it's just in between. It's enough to kick it away from the lead on the cast, Because the pop-up's slow sinking, it'll quite literally just slowly sink like that and kick away. Just rest on the bottom like that.
Would you use that over a spread of boilies or bits and bobs? Or
Exactly that. I mean, on this lake that I'm fishing it over, spread of boilies, but I'm doing that by hand. I'm like putting one over there, one over there, one over there. And to be honest, I'm going against the grain a little bit. I'm fishing a handful of hemp over the top as well.
Yeah.
And it's probably not the in thing, but it's working for me, so
well,
I'm happy with that.
If it doesn't hurt.
No, exactly.
And then above the ledge, you'd have a fluorocarbon leader. What pound was that?
Yeah, that's just on the lake that I'm fishing. That is £20 IQ2. If I'm casting, like I said earlier, I would use a contour leader of £12. It's all pinned down by little bits of putty. There's a bit of putty also on the hook link, and some on that ring there, obviously, to weigh the pop up down on the hinge stiff rig. So yeah, it's a super rig, mate. And it's been doing the business.
Right, I noticed you've got a little bottom bait presentation there, or the end of one.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I use this presentation if I feel the need for a bottom bait, which obviously you do at certain times. This is going to be tied to a combi link, basically, Albright. You know, the Albright knot that you've used before.
Yep.
Very, very simple. It's just a supple braid that's whipped onto a size 6 or 8 wide gape. This is actually the inner braid of N-Trap. I prefer this to Supernatural, to be honest. It's just that a tiny, tiny bit stiffer. So like I said, I've whipped that on blowback style to, my choice of hook, which I'll match to the size of the hook bait, whether I need to beef up for weedy situations or whatever. There's a bit of shrink tubing just over the eye, just to help it flip when in the fish's mouth. I tie this to some £15 IQ2, which I'll show you now.
Got a little blowback ring on there too?
There's a blowback ring on there, yeah. I don't know about you, mate, but I don't think that makes any difference to the blowback situation. I just use that so the rig can reset itself should it be sucked in and spit out.
Right. Gives it a nice bit of movement as well, doesn't it?
Gives it a bit of movement as well, yeah. So you just go through the fluorocarbon. You whip over that sort of 5 or 6 times. 1, sticky, wet fingers. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay.
So 6 times
So
round the
there.
doubled up.
Yeah, and then I just whip one back round and then go through the loop. Right, so you then need to pull everything down tight and together. Moisten it with saliva. Pull it down.
I'll be honest with you, I started using this rig a few years ago. I always used coated braids, and then after looking at this in the edge and comparing it, you just think, well, why am I not using that?
Well, it just disappears, doesn't it?
Why risk it?
So there's the knot finished. You just need to trim the tag ends, which I'll do now. There's one tag end gone. It looks a bit messy at the moment, but I'll cover it in putty just to neaten it up and pin everything down. So I trim the fluorocarbon tag end.
Gives it a little hinge as well, doesn't it? A bit of putty.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So that's the final sort of knot. Like I said, it looks a bit messy at the moment, but I'll cover that with a bit of putty. Once covered in putty, it's superb.
It's immensely strong, isn't it?
It's very strong. Yeah, very strong. I've had real hit and hold situations, and it's never let me down, this one. It just looks superb on the bottom.
Cool. Well, yeah, as I say, it's a rig I've used and still do with great confidence. So
yeah,
well worth a go.
Definitely.
Obviously, you've been doing a bit up there and on your Clear Lake. Have you got any other sort of general tips for clear water?
Well,
what about the actual spots?
Yeah, that was one thing. I've learned a lot about what carp prefer in clear water. The spots that most people think are the ones, the glowing gravel spots, they aren't the ones, the fish are so, they'll feed over the top of them, but they're so wary, it's untrue, regardless of how invisible your rig is, if you're fishing it over blatant gravel, they're always a lot warier. As a result, I tend to target, I wouldn't call them choddy spots, but they're real smooth, firm silt with just flecks of gravel in them, like real grey in colour. The carp seem to feed over the top of them with real confidence, and if there's the odd strand of Canadian, dying Canadian pondweed or just little strands of weed on it, they feed a lot more happily over that. And the hinge stiff rig suits itself perfectly because it's a little bit softer. I've been a bit cunning. I've actually used the oar to push the lead into the bottom as well, and it's just the ultimate, mate, really. They can't see anything. All you can see is your hook bait and the offerings in the bits of weed and bits of silt. So
the other thing is they can just take their time, can't they?
Yeah, exactly.
And just sort of pick away what they want. I mean, if you had a few baits on there, it'd be easy to work out what's got a hook on, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
But you chuck them in the leaves and it's going to be a bit harder, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, definitely a good little tip, that. Another one that I sort of noticed last year, and fished in a very clear small lake, it doesn't get a lot of pressure, but the fish would react to you being there. When I'd get there, they'd be happy as Larry, swimming around, quite close to the edge.
Yeah.
Once I'd done a couple of laps, it starts acting a little bit shyer.
Yeah,
as soon
they
as you
do.
start flicking leads and baits in, you'd hardly see them.
No, they will see your silhouette. They will do, against the skyline or sun or whatever. So just keep as stealthy as possible. That applies to all fishing, really, doesn't it?
Definitely.
But clear waters, even more so, I think.